Okay, we'll now give the floor to Ms. Gloria Placer, who is the Director of the Cabinet of the Secretariat of State for the Information Society and Digital Agenda. He will be speaking about the new European cybersecurity strategy and its involvement or its development in Spain.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank INCIBE, which I sometimes feel to be like a mother. I thank them for the participation to take part in this conference. I'm not only the director of the Office of the Secretary of State for the Digital Agenda, I'm also the spokesperson for the Ministry of Energy, Tourism and Digital Agenda at the National Council of Cybersecurity. Therefore, cybersecurity is something that I have learned all these years to bring to my agenda, to my life, and being a degree in telecoms, more so. No public policies nor strategy in this field can be designed in this day and age without taking into consideration the European context. Therefore, the goal of my presentation, that I hope to be brief with, because I think we're running out of time, will be due, on the one hand, to recap very quickly with a bird's eye view of the current framework and cybersecurity policies current in our country, and that this may be the foundation to propose new actions, new challenges that we have in the horizon very close to us, with a special approach to what we understand from our ministry to be the representation of the impact of the last communication by the Commission in September of this year, and which is going to change in many aspects of the Spanish cybersecurity framework. So let's go for it. For those of you who are not very close to the administration, please remember that the competencies of the Secretariat of State that I represent is to develop the public policies that may foster the integration of ICTs at all levels, economic and social, with special relevance for those that have to do with digital identification, the development of services and content, the safe and responsible use, digital trust, security. In the past, we have used our own instruments, such as the digital agenda for Spain and the government, as mentioned in the previous session, the National Cybersecurity Strategy. In the immediate future, we'll be using two elements which are very important and very in-depth. We're going to call this the ENISE law and the digital strategy for a smart Spain. These two especially must be key elements of the future implementation of what has been called the Cybersecurity Act, whose draft was sent in September this year and is now being in the stage of public consultation until the next 16th of November. There is an entire community strategy. Without doubt, this will affect cybersecurity in Spain, and it's going to require to review the general standards, horizontal tools and sectoral tools affecting the entire public and private operators in our country. The good news is that we don't start from scratch. Our country has a long-standing history whose milestones we have summarized on this slide. It started in the year 2012 with the implementation of the Department for National Security, which carried on and contained, in February of 2014, the meeting to incorporate the National Cybersecurity Institute, accompanied by a set of tools that you see on the slide, which we understand that will help us to adapt and evolve our entire framework for action. To recap what we've done since the year 2012 up until this year 2017 that we have built all together, I would highlight to start with the strategy for national cybersecurity. Back in 2013, this aimed at giving an answer to what was understood then as a huge challenge, the challenge of preserving cyberspace and saving it from threats. and dangers. This set out the environment, some proposals, and some governing principles, among which we highlight coordination and cooperation internationally, the principles of proportionality, nationality, and efficacy. It also laid out 6 goals and 8 lines of action, creating an organic structure that we mentioned before, considering how important this is within the administration itself. An organic structure that is the National Council for Cybersecurity. At the time, it was seen that the political administrative cooperation were of the essence for any intervention that we may propose from the administration. This strategy leads to the National Cybersecurity Plan, whose mission is to achieve in Spain a safe use of information and telecoms systems, strengthening the capacities for intervention, defense, detection, recovery, and response in the light of a cyber attack. This plan brings down to grassroots level the definition of definite proposals articulating liabilities as well. It has special incidence on the coordination and control of all the organizations and institutions, and its degree of development, we believe, is sufficiently high because it translates into 8 plans derived that have been used as a roadmap for all the agents that make a part of this structure to guide our interventions and actions in the last few years. The key element in this entire structure and framework is the National Cybersecurity Council. Its role has been of the essence in what has been done so far, but we understand from the ministry that it will also be key in the future, basically for 2 functions which were assigned at the beginning. The first one, which is in fact the third one, its contribution to the drafting of proposals, and the 8th function to facilitate the coordination of all the competent bodies. We understand that these are key for the challenges that we're going to have as an industry in the next months, I dare say almost immediately, because coordination is drafted or brought about as one of the first coordination is highlighted as one of the first elements, perhaps the most relevant for the future, or for the present, I dare say. And as a sample of this coordination exercise to prevent overlappings and going to the point in what we're doing, in 2015, within the framework of the National Cybersecurity Council, a simple coordination measure was adopted to respond to cybersecurity incidents. And this is defined in the communities of reference for the different CERTs, and it's our framework, our technical and tactical scenario that you all know, I presume. This is a recap of the past, what happens in the future. In the future, we have 2 relevant facts. On the one hand, the digital strategy for a smart Spain, we understand, to give a response to the need to progress in a new scenario with new challenges and opportunities for our country. And this will be aligned with other initiatives at the European level, which are being fostered by the European Commission, and as well as the best practices that other countries have already started, and we'd like to do it the way they do. The ministry understands this goes beyond the scope of the national government. We have to make the most of the changes occurring in technology by promoting the adoption of information technologies across society and across businesses. And this is something in which we agree with what the Commission itself said in its communication on the 10th of May of this year for a single digital market connected for all, highlighting the need of promoting ecosystems that may be cybernetically trustworthy. We have also fostered in digitalization as a driver for inclusive and sustainable economic development. The digital strategy for Smart Spain, whose public consultation was closed last September, and which has had an incredible welcome in the industry with 150 responses that we have collected, at the Ministry endeavours to provide a response to what we have identified as the new aspects of the digital turn. First of all, the data at the core, the use of data as the basis for new services. Secondly, platforms as agents of transformation and arbiters of the digital ecosystem. Thirdly, what we call intelligent or smart regulation, adaptable and adapted to this new scenario. The fourth place, infrastructures which had to be robust and swift, but at the same time reliable and secure. Number 5, the new rights of citizens in an environment in which innovation and constant change make it difficult to synchronize what we do and what is worded in the legislative framework. Therefore, we have 5 pillars for the digital strategy to structure our actions and plans and measures that we intend to foster from the Ministry, but also from all the other ministries in a coordinated and harmonized way, in the middle and the long run, because the digital strategy for Smart Spain brings about a framework action up until the year 25 that we will adapt and flexibilize as the goals are being met and new needs arise. The 5 pillars are on the slide. Excuse me. We have economy of data, 4.0 ecosystems, smart regulation, technological infrastructures, and last but not least, citizenship and digital employment. At the same time, as you may all know, something that is constant in this kind of meetings and discussions, we are working on the transposition to the Spanish law of this directive 2016/1148 that we call the ENISE directive, relevant to the measures designed to guarantee a common level of security of the networks and information systems. The date for transposal is 21 months, the calendar, setting a limit date, a deadline, and that's the 9th of May of 2018, which is around the corner. So we expect in the next few weeks to collect the last reports prior to submit them in November to public consultation to have a draft of this new law. Therefore, as you may imagine, we are working hard to wrap up on certain details and to reach a consensus to put forward to the table a text whose wording is enjoyable to everyone, or agreeable at least. This future law shall elevate to the rank of law, and this is important for those of us who work in administration. It will define who the competent authorities are for each of one of the sectors identified. It will also identify who are the competent national CERTs and who's going to do or act as contact and coordination internally and externally with the remainder of Europe especially. And it will define a strategy and a framework for action, and whichever operators may have been identified, public or private, will be assisted, and the administration will be capable of applying sanctions if there are any serious non-compliances. This new ENISE law will enable us in the European framework to set lines of collaboration with the European Security Agency at 2 levels. One is strategic, in which the member states will take part, and ENISE together designing guides or guidelines and a constant evolution of the national capacities. And on the other hand, from an operational viewpoint, it shall foster the coordination between the national CSIRTs and the one of the European Union, with the aim to exchange information, provide supported coordination if there are cross-border incidents, and to change results, but not only that, also risks and threats by being able to anticipate them and prevent them. Europe is more than that. Last September 17, the Commission took a step forward in the reform, the legal reform of the sector, an in-depth reform, which is under public consultation until mid-November. It would be interesting for all we are asking from the administrations to get as much feedback as possible, also from the private sector, because under this proposal the Commission has brought forward, there are two clear lines of action. On the one hand, they propose a regulatory proposal to create a new European cybersecurity agency to be built from ENISE and to be given a deep knowledge and changes to its competencies. And on the other hand, it brings forward a package of legislative changes under the framework of the so-called Cybersecurity Act. This legislative package we have tried to summarize on the slide. The aim is to give Europe tools sufficient and adequate to defend ourselves from cyber attacks, reinforcing international cooperation and the exchange of information and analysis. I'd like to point out a couple of things. Not only the reform of the ENISE directive, but the establishment of a European framework for certification. The follow-up of the implementation of the lines along the ENISE directive and mechanisms to provide immediate response in the case of incident, identifying jointly what we call the malicious actors, promote public-private partnerships and dialogue in the world of cybersecurity, etc. As you see, it's an impressive package, very cross-cutting, very extended, very deep. As to ENISE, European agency, this is provided a very specific role as issuer of certification at the European level of products and services that are cyber secure. This certification system will count on the assistance and advice of experts and a European group of cybersecurity certification newly established and made up of national supervision authorities in the certification of the different member states. Besides, this super European agency will implement coordinated cooperation. It will be defined as a focal point for all the field of cyber diversity. It will bring about priorities in research and innovation in R&D, cyber R&D, to be directed to European Centre of Research and one that is newly created, and it will take care of the implementation of the ENISE directive to make sure that it is properly transposed and complied with across all countries. So what does this translate into in our day-to-day work, in our framework? What is the impact of this on our model? A priori, and with the information that we have so far, and with the caveat of being open to public consultation and the chance of changes being made to it, we understand that the competence of the ENISE agency reinforce European structures in the case of incidents, and especially in situations that are of emergency or crisis. For the want of development or governance, we understand that it's positive. We also understand that it's very positive to foster the European certification framework to ensure the cybersecurity of products and services, and also facilitating the recognition and standardization of producers and distributors in a single market. It's also very positive for the market in Spain. On our behalf, we shall try to promote certification systems both at the organizational as well as the procedural and services level, adapted to biodiversity at the degree of maturity of our business and subsectors, to cut down access barriers at a market that is becoming larger and which is creating a larger challenge, but also opportunity for Spanish businesses. Beside this, on our behalf and what the ministry does, we are working elsewhere on more legislative issues that are nonetheless important. With the proposals and lines that are important, considering the encryption of communications or other obligations that are brought about to the providers of communications, electronic communications, in the case of incidents, and the evidence that they are going to be demanded to keep in their systems. So to conclusion, and now to wrap up, we are fostering an autonomous European cybersecurity framework that is proactive and not reactive, which is positive. We improve the response capacity and the resilience by means of a European escalation and a clear coordination structure, another positive thing. We adopt a scheme to harmonize in the cybersecurity market with a normalized framework of certifications, another positive thing. We ensure the participation of all the actors of the Commission, the Member States, and the citizens. This is also positive. And we have a legal framework that we shall have to develop and deepen into to make sure it's beneficial for us all. But in any case, it's another positive thing. So all I can do is conclude my presentation, bringing forward a message that is clear enough. We believe that the European strategy and its impact are good for Spain, it's good for the country, for the administration, and for the businesses, because we understand that greater coordination, as we have seen, is needed for internally. If we are capable of doing our job properly, it will facilitate the detection and counterattack to any cyber attack. And this fledgling legislative package will enable Spanish companies to produce, distribute, and defend standardized products in a single market with unexpected growth rates. We trust that from the public authorities we may be able to channel this demand and contribute towards the development of this industry, which we believe is strategic for our country. Thank you very much.